"Ma'am, I need you to stand." The sentence sliced through the stillness of the first-class cabin like a snapped steel wire. Every row froze. The soft clink of glass stopped mid-air, then silence. Naomi Hart looked up, her hand still resting on the chilled champagne glass. Across from her, the young flight attendant, Emily Novak, wore a polite smile, but her eyes were locked in a mechanical, vacant stare, the kind that had performed this gesture too many times before. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I need you to stand." Behind Emily stood a middle-aged man in a grey suit. Gregory Shaw, his face slick with confidence and entitlement, his hand resting on the partition wall as if claiming territory. No one said what was happening, but everyone understood. No explanation was needed. The answer was written in posture. "This gentleman is a preferred passenger," Emily said sweetly, her voice cutting through the air like silk over steel. "There's been a small adjustment to the seating arrangement." A few heads lifted. Phones tilted, screens glowing discreetly. Curious eyes flickered between the cream-colored seats. Naomi glanced at the digital ticket in her hand. A. The seat she had booked 3 weeks ago, confirmed twice, and paid in full. She said nothing, just drew in a slow, steady breath. The air around her thickened, gaining weight. Then she stood. No argument, no anger, only a look, cold, direct, unforgettable. Naomi carried a black leather backpack and a small hand case. No logo. No entourage. She looked more like a marketing consultant than the CEO of a billion-dollar tech company. That, perhaps, was why Emily hadn't bothered to look closely. Naomi remembered the moment she boarded. Emily had scanned her ticket, her eyes flicking past her toward the line behind, assuming Naomi had entered the wrong cabin. "You're sure this is 1A?" Emily had asked, smiling out of habit, not courtesy. Naomi held up her screen. "Yes, 1A." Emily's brow had furrowed, not from confusion, but from suspicion. Then she turned to her colleague at the galley. "We've got a situation here." Not a mistake. A situation. The first-class cabin had already started to pay attention. A woman in seat 2C looked up from her fashion magazine. A man in 3A paused his call. Naomi remained composed, her lips pressed into a perfect line. She knew exactly what this was. She had seen that look before, in boardrooms, at conferences, in five-star hotel lobbies, where people politely said, "I'm sorry, you might be on the wrong floor." Always courteous, always questioning whether she truly belonged. Naomi stayed silent, but her mind began recording every detail. Emily's stance, shoulders tight, eyes avoiding contact. The murmurs creeping through the rows. Time, 6:47 p.m. The flight, 15 minutes delayed. She didn't need to react. She just needed to observe, to remember. Because only a handful of people on this plane knew that Apex Air was about to launch its new coordination system, and Altura Systems, Naomi's company, controlled the entire digital infrastructure, flight schedules, fuel management, baggage tracking, crew data, everything. 3 months of negotiation, 8 months of testing. And Naomi Hart was the only person with the authority to press activate or suspend. Yet here, in their eyes, she was just another black woman who didn't belong, a mistake in their white leather world of champagne and comfort. Footsteps sounded behind her. The scent of expensive cologne filled the air. Gregory Shaw walked past, placed his briefcase in the overhead bin, and sat down in seat 1A. He didn't look at her. He didn't need to. She was already gone. In the rear cabin, Naomi found her new seat, 18C. Quietly, she placed her bag under the seat and opened her laptop. Her fingers brushed across the keyboard, not to work, but to remember. One last glance forward, where the warm light of first class still shimmered over Gregory Shaw's self-satisfied smile. Naomi tilted her head, her lips curving into the faintest suggestion of a smile. No one knew. But in that moment of quiet humiliation, she had already begun the first step of reclaiming justice for herself. Not through rage, but through silent power. And as the engines roared to life, Naomi Hart, the woman who had been asked to leave seat 1A, made a decision. They would all learn what the word priority truly meant. The cabin door closed. The soft click of the electronic lock sounded like the final punctuation of a quiet play, one where Naomi Hart had just been pushed off the stage, though she was, in fact, the investor who owned it. She sat in seat 18C, the worn leather pressing against her back, the narrow space forcing her knees close to the seat ahead. The faint scent of stale coffee and scorched plastic lingered in the air. No champagne, no warm towel, only her steady breath. Naomi opened her laptop. The glow from the screen lit her calm face. She didn't type a complaint. She didn't message a manager. She didn't need to. She was calculating. Up front, Emily passed by with a tray of water, deliberately skipping row 18. Naomi didn't mind. She tilted her head slightly, glancing through the narrow gap between the seats. From there, she could see the silhouette of Gregory Shaw in seat 1A, leaning back, smug, a glass of champagne in his hand, nodding with the quiet arrogance of a man accustomed to being served first. Naomi pressed her lips together. Inside, a quiet fire burned, not of anger, but of measured intent. 3 hours earlier, at the Manhattan headquarters of Altura Systems, her legal team had sent the final contract to Apex Air. A $700 million deal, making Altura the digital backbone of the entire airline. Within 72 hours, the entire system, flight schedules, fuel control, baggage tracking, crew data, would run on Altura's platform, designed, supervised, and fully controlled by Naomi herself. Buried deep within the contract was an unnoticed clause, a small but powerful safeguard that granted her the authority to suspend all access if the partner violated ethical standards or damaged the integrity of the collaboration. She called it Protocol Sigma, a single digital switch, absolute and final. Naomi once believed in collaboration, in changing things from within. She had ignored the internal reports about Apex's repeated discrimination against employees and passengers. She wanted to believe she could help fix the culture. But the moment Emily told her to stand up for a preferred passenger, Naomi understood. The system didn't want change. It wanted order, neatly wrapped in a professional smile. A soft ding broke her thoughts. A message from Daniel Ruiz, Altura's CFO. Alan Pierce confirmed the signing for Monday. They're thrilled, ready for the media launch. Naomi looked at the message and smiled faintly. Thrilled? They had no idea that within just 3 hours, that same system could freeze into a silent block worth hundreds of millions. She closed the laptop. The cabin light gleamed faintly on the metal tray table, cold and sharp, like a thought forming into shape. A well-dressed older woman in a silk dress walked past, glancing at Naomi with a mix of pity and judgment. The woman sighed and shook her head slightly. Naomi caught that look and realized she had seen it her entire life. From Harvard to Silicon Valley, from global tech summits to boardrooms where men shook hands over her head, Naomi had learned to survive through strategic silence. She had heard people say she was brilliant, but a little too confident. A little too confident, meaning she refused to bow. The plane began to taxi. Naomi closed her eyes and listened as the engine swelled. Her heartbeat aligned with the steady vibration of the metal floor. 1 beat, 2 beats, then calm. She thought of her father, an aerospace engineer, who once told her, "You know, planes don't fly because of beautiful wings, but because of the perfect balance between lift and drag. People are the same." Naomi smiled softly. Tonight, that balance was about to be disturbed. From the front of the cabin, Gregory's voice carried clearly through her headset. He was on the phone, not even bothering to lower his tone. "I handled it. They always think they're special. People like that never understand how real business works." Naomi opened her eyes. No reaction, just memory. She drafted an email. Subject, Protocol Sigma, standby. Body, prepare to inspect the full Apex air system. Activate on command. She didn't hit send. Not yet. She wanted them to sleep a little longer in their illusion. Up front, Emily and her colleague Linda whispered and laughed softly, unaware that the woman they had removed from a priority seat was the same one who could freeze their entire airline with a single touch. Naomi leaned back. The window reflected her face, calm, steady, her eyes bright, and the quiet smile of someone holding a power the world had yet to recognize. She whispered, almost to herself, "Not everyone in the front seat is the one flying the plane." And the aircraft named Apex 612 rolled off the runway, carrying with it a lesson the entire world was about to learn. The seatbelt sign chimed softly. The cabin steadied, and the warm lighting settled over the relaxed faces of those who lived in the world of being served. But in seat 18C, Naomi Hart did not recline. Her eyes stayed fixed on the front of the plane, on the seat that had once been hers, now occupied by someone who believed it was rightfully his. From where she sat, she could see the backrest of 1A tilted comfortably. Gregory Shaw stretched his legs, jacket unbuttoned. Holding his champagne like it was a symbol of natural privilege. On his wrist, a Patek Philippe glimmered. In another world, Naomi could have bought 10 of them. But what she wanted wasn't the watch, it was respect. A flight attendant passed by, placing a tray of water at row 17. When she reached Naomi, she didn't stop, even though their eyes were only inches apart. Naomi didn't care. She didn't need an apology. Because what bothered her wasn't the act, it was the habit beneath it. Up front, Linda Cho, the head attendant, approached Gregory. Her voice carried just enough to be overheard by those nearby. "Thank you for your patience, sir. We truly appreciate your cooperation. I hope the seat meets your expectations." "Perfect." Gregory replied, without looking at her. And remember, he gestured towards the back, make sure the passengers back there don't cause trouble. I want a quiet flight. Naomi almost laughed. Quiet, she thought. Such a curious word. People always demanded quiet, so long as it served them. She opened her laptop. The light reflected on her calm face, though her eyes gleamed like tempered steel. A document was already open. Apex Air Integration, Doc PDF. Beside it, a note she had written to herself a week earlier. Never forget, this system lives or dies by your signature. She reread the line, took a sip of water, and smiled faintly. Every line of code, every algorithm in Altura Systems' platform carried her fingerprints. No one understood it better than she did. And no one could lock it down, except her. A soft chime broke the silence. A message. Naomi checked her phone. It was from Alan Pierce, CEO of Apex Air. Looking forward to seeing you Monday, Naomi. The entire board is excited for the signing. We believe this will be a lasting partnership. Naomi's smile deepened, sharp and quiet. Lasting, she thought. If he knew that one of his own employees had just humiliated a $700 million partner on a flight bearing his company's logo, the word lasting might sound very different. The captain's voice came through the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we are cruising at 34,000 feet. Estimated arrival in Chicago, 2 hours and 40 minutes. Emily walked down the aisle, checking seatbelts. When she reached row 18, she glanced briefly at Naomi, then looked away quickly, as if afraid that meeting those eyes might force her to confront herself. Naomi picked up her pen and signed her notepad. It wasn't an official document, just a record. She wanted to remember the faces of everyone involved in tonight's test. Not out of hatred, but for evidence. Suddenly, laughter echoed from the front cabin. Gregory was on the phone, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. I told you, these people never understand how business really works. They think being good is enough. No, it's about connections, about who you know. Naomi listened. Each word landed like a cold blade. She had heard the same sentences before, at conferences, in interviews, at cocktail receptions where investors spoke of diversity as a PR term rather than a principle. But now those words echoed above the clouds, 34,000 feet from the ground. And she was in seat 18C. Linda leaned close to Gregory, whispering. Naomi couldn't catch every word, but she heard corporate request and VIP. She understood. They were rewriting the story. It wasn't discrimination, it was a corporate priority. They were editing the truth while she was still sitting there. Naomi opened her phone and typed a draft. Protocol Sigma, stand by. Partner fails to meet ethical standards. Prepare for activation. Her fingers hovered over the send button. Not yet. She looked up at the ceiling. A thought flickered through her mind. They think this is just a seat. But she knew it was a test of character. The lights dimmed, bathing the cabin in a soft amber glow. Naomi leaned her head back, her inner voice calm but sharp. Some people sit in the front, not because they deserve it, but because the system was built to place them there. She opened her eyes, staring toward 1A. Gregory's head was tilted back, a smug smile on his lips, the glass in his hand catching the light. Naomi nodded slightly, almost to herself. "Enjoy it," she whispered, "because when we land, everything changes." The plane sliced through the clouds, leaving behind long silver trails across the night sky. Lines that pointed toward a storm no one on board yet knew was coming. The engines hummed steadily beneath her feet, the heartbeat of a metal giant carrying over 200 souls through the night sky. But for Naomi Hart, that sound was more than motion. It was a countdown. Everything looked perfect. Soft lights, poured wine, crisp white linens. Yet at 34,000 feet, something invisible had cracked, the thing people call respect. From seat 1A, Gregory Shaw was still on the phone, his voice carrying farther than it needed to. "I just dealt with a situation." She thought she could demand special treatment. People like that never understand how the world really works. Naomi heard every word. People like that. The phrase wasn't new. It had followed her all her life, from when she was a young intern mistaken for the coffee assistant, to when she became the first black female CEO of Altura Systems, still having to prove her position wasn't just a diversity quota. She quietly placed her hand on her laptop. The screen glowed, reflecting the calm face of a woman who had endured far too many tests. Up front, Linda Cho hurried toward the cockpit, her face tense. Naomi tilted her head slightly, watching. 2 minutes later, Linda returned, a tablet in hand. She stopped at seat 1A, bent down, and whispered something to Gregory. He frowned, waved her off, and snapped, "Handle it later. I'm busy." Naomi couldn't hear everything, but she saw enough, the way Linda's shoulders tightened, her hand gripping the edge of the tablet. Something had just been discovered. They knew, not everything, but enough to realize who they had just offended. A young man in row 16 turned his head, his gaze briefly meeting Naomi's. He was wearing a grey hoodie, headphones around his neck. Jaden Brooks. Their eyes met, not in pity, but in understanding. A quiet acknowledgement between two strangers who knew what it meant to be out of place. Naomi gave a small nod. No words, just a sign. "I'm fine." But they aren't. She opened her inbox. 3 new messages from Alan Pierce, CEO of Apex Air. "Looking forward to meeting you Monday. We have full faith in Altura. This partnership will redefine the company's future." Naomi read each line and smiled faintly. History indeed, but not the kind they expected. She switched tabs to the Altura Systems security dashboard. On the screen, a small blue window glowed. Protocol Sigma, pending activation. Beneath it, the options lined up neatly. Suspend cloud access, lock scheduling AI, terminate route optimization, freeze integration. Naomi typed a few test commands. The system responded instantly. Everything was ready, waiting for a single instruction. She leaned back and closed her eyes. Memories flooded in. Bright neon lit conference rooms where she was the only woman at the table. Skeptical glances, and those conditional compliments she'd learned to recognize. "You're sharp. Impressive, even in this field." In this field. Meaning a world of men. A world where power came pre-packaged in privilege. Naomi had chosen silence before. Not out of weakness, but because she understood that real change required patience and precision. And now, that moment was approaching. She opened a new email draft. Subject: Protocol Sigma. Standby mode. Body: Technical team to confirm full audit activation of Apex Air's systems upon command. Suspend all external access until ethical verification is complete. Her finger hovered over Send. She looked out the window, where the city lights far below drifted like a river of silver. Not yet. She wanted them confident a little longer, wanted them to believe they'd won, that everything was still under control. When the strike came, it had to be perfect, mathematically precise. The intercom chimed. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll begin dinner service shortly. Please remain seated." Naomi smiled faintly. Up front, Linda and Emily were pushing the meal cart, their smiles reset as if nothing had happened. Gregory sat relaxed, straightening his tie, raising his glass. Naomi watched them, her expression not angry but surgical, precise, cold, and clean. "Justice doesn't need an explosion," she whispered softly to herself. "Only the right touch at the right time." A single command appeared in her mind. Short, sharp, final. She typed it out and saved the draft. Command ready. Execution pending. The lights dimmed as the cabin slipped into night mode. Passengers drifted to sleep. Only Naomi, the woman expelled from seat 1A, remained awake, silent, steady, and ready for the moment when the world would have no choice but to look up. The wind howled against the aircraft's windows, like the sky itself was breathing heavily. Most passengers were asleep. The cabin lights dimmed to a soft amber glow, except for one faint pool of light reflecting off seat 1A, where Gregory Shaw sat wide awake, confident, oblivious to the fact that his entire empire now rested on the fingertips of Naomi Hart. She sat motionless, silent. The laptop before her glowed a cold, steady white, mirroring a face so calm it was almost terrifying. On the screen, a window was open. Protocol Sigma, authorization request. 3 layers of security codes, all under the exclusive control of the CEO of Altura Systems. Naomi began typing the first sequence. The quiet taps of the keyboard echoed faintly, each one like a strike against the wall of arrogance Apex Air had built around itself. Then a prompt appeared. "Are you sure you want to proceed? This action cannot be undone." Naomi paused. For a moment, her mind drifted through the rooms she had walked into over the years. Rooms filled with polished marble floors and colder smiles, where men introduced themselves with titles longer than their names, where they called her the bright young lady, and smirked as she left the table. They thought she would know her place. They were wrong. Another sound broke the stillness, the creak of leather. Gregory was still on the phone, his voice cutting through the quiet. "I'm telling you, Alan needs to learn how to choose his partners better. I can't stand working with these companies that only talk about diversity. They don't understand how real business works." Alan. Naomi's lips curved slightly. The man Gregory had just mentioned, Alan Pierce, CEO of Apex Air, was the same man about to sign the biggest contract of his career, with her. She inhaled slowly. Her eyes cooled. Naomi's fingers moved across the keyboard. A single command appeared, precise and unwavering. Command: initiate full audit. Suspend cloud access. Activate Sigma protocol. Enter. A faint click followed. Just one tiny sound in a noisy world, but enough to turn a $700 million system upside down. Outside, the aircraft sliced through the clouds in silence, but on the ground, the servers of Apex Air began to light up with warning codes. In the Denver data center, access denied. In the Chicago flight scheduling hub, connection timeout. In Dallas baggage control, system lock engaged. Within 60 seconds, the operational heart of Apex Air was frozen. Naomi stared at the screen. The confirmation line appeared. Protocol Sigma activated. Ethics review pending. She sat still. No triumph, no satisfaction. This wasn't revenge. This was balance. A gentle vibration rippled through the cabin, tilting the glass of water on her tray. Naomi steadied it with her hand, not letting a single drop spill. It was how she lived, composed, deliberate, in control, even as the world around her shook. Up front, Emily and Linda continued chatting, laughing softly, unaware that somewhere their airline's core systems were freezing one by one. Gregory lifted his glass, toasting to nothing but his own pride, the image of a man convinced he was exactly where he belonged. Naomi glanced at her watch. 9:02 p.m. On schedule. She opened her phone and sent a message to Olivia Park, Altura's chief legal counsel. Sigma initiated. Ethics clause triggered. Begin documentation. The reply came almost instantly. Received. Are you sure? Naomi typed back. I'm not sure about them, but I'm sure about me. She leaned back and looked out the window. Far below, the city lights shimmered like veins of living circuitry. A deep calm spread through her chest. She knew that by morning, phones would ring, inboxes would overflow, and Apex's boardroom would erupt in chaos. The same people who once treated her as the second partner would finally understand what consequence looked like. In row 16, Jaden glanced back. He saw Naomi close her laptop, her face serene, not angry, just unshakably composed. He didn't know why, but something in him sensed she had just done something monumental. Naomi fastened her seatbelt, her gaze fixed on the front cabin. The warm overhead light glowed over Gregory as he laughed with the attendants, champagne swirling in his glass. She watched, then whispered softly to herself, "They think they're flying high, but they don't realize the ground has already disappeared beneath them." She closed her eyes, a brief, peaceful rest after a single keystroke that had just ignited a $700 million earthquake. Apex Flight 612 sliced through the night sky, quiet and steady. From the outside, it seemed peaceful. But beneath that calm surface, a storm was already forming, not in the engines, but online. In row 16, Jaden Brooks, a young software engineer, held his phone and looked toward the front. From where he sat, he could see Naomi Hart in 18C, upright, contouled, eyes closed, her calmness unsettling in its stillness. Far ahead, in first class, Gregory Shaw laughed loudly, his voice echoing through the cabin. "I told them already. People like her only talk, they never act. They think that throwing a tech project at us will earn them respect. It's hilarious." His words carried far enough to be heard 2 cabins away. Some passengers exchanged uneasy glances. A few looked down, pretending not to hear. Others frowned but stayed silent. Jayden didn't. He opened his camera. The image shook slightly with the hum of the plane, but was clear enough. The man in 1A in a grey suit, glass of wine in hand, and farther back, a black woman sitting in silence, light reflecting off her cheek, calm and cold. Jayden thought, this can't just slide by. The first tweet appeared. At Jayden Brooks. Flying with Apex Air right now. They just forced a black woman out of her paid 1A seat to give it to a white priority passenger. She didn't say a word. She's sitting quietly in row 18. Someone needs to see this. He added the photo, slightly blurry, but clear enough to show her face. A second caption followed. Her name's Naomi Hart, CEO of Altura Systems. Fun fact, her company is about to sign a 700-mantle deal with Apex. He hit tweet. In 10 minutes, the post hit 500 likes, then 1,000, then 10,000. Notifications poured in. In other cabins, passengers started looking around. A woman whispered to her husband, "Honey, look, it's our flight." In first class, flight attendant Emily Novak received the first alert on her smartwatch. She glanced down, the airline's logo flashing beside the word trending. A chill ran down her spine. "Linda," she whispered, "you need to see this." Linda Cho stepped closer, peering at the screen. A photo, a tweet, a name. Naomi Hart. Her body froze. She looked toward row 18, where Naomi now sat with her eyes open, calm, almost expectant, as if she had known this would happen exactly this way. She's the CEO of Altura," Emily stammered. I didn't know." Linda turned, walking briskly toward the cockpit. She had to report this. She had to do something. But what? She wasn't sure. Up front, Gregory Shaw still hadn't noticed. He was talking again, this time to the woman next to him. "You know what the problem is? This industry's full of propaganda now. They call it diversity initiatives. But what happens? People get promoted just because of their skin color. That's how they destroy standards." The woman chuckled softly. "You might have a point." Jayden bit his lip and hit record. The camera caught everything. The arrogance, the tone, the context. Then came tweet number 2. "The man in 1A is Gregory Shaw, Regional Director at Apex Air, complaining about diversity. Meanwhile, Apex is about to sign a 700 penatlas deal with her company. I'm recording. Receipts coming." The views skyrocketed. The hashtag Apex Air shot to the top of trending. Comments flooded in. "If this is real, that airline's finished. They kicked their own partner out of first class. Unreal. This isn't just discrimination, it's policy." The phone rang in the crew area. Linda answered. The voice from the ground was sharp, urgent. "Ms. Cho, this is Central Operations. What's happening on 612? Media's blowing up. Twitter's on fire. A passenger named Naomi Hart. What do you know?" Linda swallowed hard. I think it was a seat mix-up." "It's not a mix-up anymore," the voice snapped. "She's your strategic partner, and she's trending #1 nationwide." In the cabin, Naomi checked her phone. A notification popped up. "Jayden Brooks, just tagged you in a tweet." She opened it. The photo was grainy, the caption simple. She hadn't posted it, but it was spreading the truth she wanted the world to see. Naomi looked up. The light from her screen flickered in her eyes, not with anger, but with quiet conviction. At last, without her saying a single word, the world was speaking for her. She smiled faintly, the kind of smile born not from victory, but from clarity. The satisfaction of watching a seed take root in the storm. Outside, the night sky remained still. But below, social media was blazing like wildfire, and every eye in the country was turning upward to Flight 612. 3,000 miles away, inside the 42-story glass headquarters of Apex Air in Chicago, the office lights still burned, even though it was well past 9 at night. Most employees had gone home. Only one man remained in the vast conference room, surrounded by screens flashing with red alerts. Alan Pierce, CEO of Apex Air, set down his cup of coffee, just as his phone buzzed. The caller ID read, "Corporate Communications Director." "Alan, we have a serious problem." "At this hour?" "What?" "It's urgent. She's on Flight 612. "Who's she?" "Naomi Hart, the CEO of Altura Systems." Alan froze. That couldn't be right. She was flying with Apex? He hadn't heard anything about it. What happened? A passenger uploaded a video. It's spreading like wildfire. We're being accused of discrimination against our own $700 million partner. Alan opened his laptop and clicked the link his subordinate had sent. On the screen, a shaky video appeared, the interior of an airplane. A man's voice rang out clearly. "People like that don't understand how the world works." And in the background, Naomi Hart, sitting silently in row 18C. Alan shot to his feet, coffee spilling across the table. "Take that video down. Call the PR team right now." "We can't. It already has over 200,000 views in 10 minutes. Another voice joined the call, this one from the speakerphone. Rakesh Patel, Apex's CTO. "Alan, there's something else. I just checked the integration dashboard. Altura's system, it's locked. None of our accounts can access it." Alan frowned. "A system glitch?" "No, a manual lockout, a command from the highest authorization level at Altura, with the CEO's digital signature." Alan's blood ran cold. "You're telling me Naomi Hart just shut down our entire system?" "Exactly. Everything, flight scheduling, baggage management, crew coordination. It's all frozen. If we can't restore access within 2 hours, tomorrow morning's operations will collapse." Alan began pacing, sweat gathering under his collar. His phone rang again. The chairman of the board. "Alan, what the hell is happening? I've had a dozen calls from shareholders. CNN and Bloomberg are running the video. Our stock is already down 2 points in after-hours trading." Alan's voice trembled. "We're handling it. It's just a misunderstanding with a passenger. That passenger is your strategic partner, the one with the power to freeze your entire airline. Do you even realize what that means?" Alan turned back to the screen. The control panel was flashing with warnings. "Access denied. Manual override failed. Emergency login rejected. The same system he had proudly described at a press conference as the most advanced in the country was now a useless shell. In that moment, Alan felt as if not just the airline, but he himself was falling. "Rakesh," he said through clenched teeth, "how long before the first flight is affected?" 30 minutes. If we don't fix it, over 40 flights will have to be cancelled tonight. And if it lasts until morning, the entire network will crash. We'll lose tens of millions per hour. Alan gripped his phone tightly. "Get her on the line. Call Naomi Hart, now." "We've tried, sir. No response. Her plane's in airplane mode." Outside the window, Chicago's lights shimmered against the dark river below. Alan stood before the glass, his reflection merging with the red error lights. A soft ping broke the silence. New email. From Naomi Hart, Altura Systems. Subject: Protocol Sigma. Ethics review triggered. The message was brief and surgical. Due to violations of ethical policy and evidence of systemic discrimination, all Apex Air access to Altura Systems has been temporarily suspended until further notice. Contract Clause D, Section 4 activated. NH. Alan read it once, then collapsed into his chair, his eyes fixed on the final line. "This action cannot be reversed without Altura authorization." The chairman's voice roared through the speaker. "Alan, if this isn't resolved within the hour, you can consider your position terminated." Alan said nothing. He just stared at the countdown ticking across the screen, each second pulling Apex Air closer to the point of no return. Somewhere high above, Flight 612 still glided through the night sky. And on that plane, the woman expelled from Seat 1A was now controlling an entire airline with a single touch. Alan drew a deep breath as the realization sank in. Sometimes, the hardest fall doesn't come from losing your seat. It comes from underestimating the wrong person. The sky over Chicago was beginning to pale as Apex Flight 612 descended. Through the window, the city stretched out like a web of golden veins, streets intertwining like the lifeblood of a giant body. But inside the cabin, no one felt calm. Naomi Hart opened her eyes as the announcement came over the speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are preparing for landing. Please fasten your seatbelts." She adjusted hers, her expression composed, as if she already knew every move that would follow. Overhead, Linda Cho gripped her phone, face pale. The message from headquarters still glowed on the screen. "Upon landing, escort passenger Naomi Hart to the front. Executive team awaiting. Provide her with anything she requires." Linda looked toward row 18, her pulse racing. The woman sat quietly, face serene as still water, but the air around her was sharp as steel. Up front, Gregory Shaw had stopped laughing. He kept checking his phone, his expression growing paler each time. No signal, no updates. He had no idea that the Apex headquarters below was in complete shutdown. "This can't be happening," he muttered, his fingers trembling. "The company's lost access." Linda passed by, hearing him, and lowered her head even further. The plane touched down, a soft jolt, then the long hiss of brakes. Naomi lifted her gaze. Through the window, morning light struck her face, not the glow of victory, but the illumination of justice about to be delivered in full view of the world. As the seatbelt sign clicked off, passengers stirred. Everyone knew. Those who had seen the tweets, watched the videos, or overheard the whispers, all eyes turned to her. Linda hurried down the aisle, her face ashen, as if she'd walked through a storm. "Ms. Hart," she began, her voice shaking, "on behalf of Apex Air, I want to apologize for the unfortunate misunderstanding. The management team is waiting at the gate. They want—" Naomi cut her off, voice soft but clear. "A misunderstanding? No. It's a policy. You said it yourself. Operational priority, didn't you?" Linda fell silent. Passengers nearby looked up, phones already recording. Naomi stood, the black leather backpack swinging lightly over her shoulder, the soft light glinting off the small Altura Systems logo. "I just want to ask," she said evenly, her voice carrying through the cabin, "what exactly made him, the man in 1A, more of a priority than me?" Linda opened her mouth, but no sound came. Naomi tilted her head slightly, eyes cool. "It's fine. I already know." She pulled out her phone, the screen glowing bright. On it, a line of text confirmed the command issued the night before. "Protocol Sigma, active." The soft blue light reflected on Linda's face. "6 months ago, your company signed a $700 million contract with Altura Systems, and I, the woman you asked to leave seat 1A, am the one holding the key to your entire operational network. 2 hours ago, I shut it down." A wave of murmurs rippled through the cabin. Phones rose in unison. Gregory froze, color draining from his face. "No, that's impossible," he stammered. Naomi turned to him, her gaze steady. "Oh, I believe you were just talking about standards and competence, weren't you? Tell me, is it standard practice to eject a paying customer from her seat because she doesn't fit your image?" He rose, voice trembling. "You have no idea who I am," Naomi cut in, her tone low, sharp as glass. "No, Mr. Shaw, it's you who has no idea who I am. That's your problem." The cabin door opened. 3 men in grey suits stood waiting at the jet bridge. In the middle was Alan Pierce, CEO of Apex Air, his face drawn and pale. He stepped forward, eyes wide with panic. "Ms. Hart, I can't begin to apologize. This was a terrible mistake, and Naomi raised a hand, stopping him. "You don't need to apologize to me. Apologize to everyone your system has hurt, because this didn't start today, and it won't end with a speech." Alan opened his mouth, but Naomi continued. "2 hours ago, your system went dark. The control board turned red. I know because I was watching it. You were running around trying to save a network that you let rot from the inside." The cabin was utterly silent, every passenger still. Naomi moved forward, each step deliberate, her words heavy and precise. "I've given you 48 hours to prove that Apex Air deserves to be trusted. Not by me, but by anyone who's ever been told they don't belong here." Alan lowered his head. "We'll do whatever you ask. I promise." Naomi looked straight at him, her tone calm yet unyielding. "I don't need promises. I need action. And if 48 hours pass without real change, that $700 million contract ends. Permanently." She stopped at the cabin door, where the light from the terminal spilled in, a clear line between 2 worlds. Behind her, passengers still filmed. Gregory stood motionless, pale and shaken. Linda's lips trembled without words. Naomi turned once more. "Next time you talk about priority passengers, remember this. Real power isn't printed on a boarding pass. It's held by the one who can keep this plane from taking off." She stepped out. The murmurs broke, then faded until the sound of applause began, slow at first, then spreading through the cabin like a wave. Naomi didn't look back. She only tightened the strap of her backpack. Outside, the first light of morning caught her hair, bright, cold, and unwavering. She knew the next battle wouldn't be fought in the skies, but in the boardroom, where dignity would finally be measured by truth. The news spread like wildfire. Within an hour of Naomi Hart stepping off the jet bridge, the hashtag #ApexAirRacism had soared to #1 on every platform. The video Jaden Brooks filmed inside the cabin was shared millions of times, replayed on national television, talk shows, podcasts, and nightly news segments. Partner CEO removed from first-class seat. Altura Systems freezes $700 million contract. The aviation industry in turmoil. Every headline carried the same face: Naomi Hart, the woman once told to stand up, now the one forcing an entire corporation to its knees. 48 hours. That was the deadline Naomi had given, and now Apex's entire infrastructure was ticking down like a live bomb. At the Chicago headquarters, Alan Pierce entered an emergency meeting at 5:12 a.m. His eyes were bloodshot, his coffee cold, his voice trembling from exhaustion. In front of him, the screen glowed red. Hundreds of flights cancelled, thousands of passengers stranded, losses exceeding $25 million overnight. "We need Altura access restored immediately," one executive shouted. "Impossible," replied Rakesh Patel, the CTO. "They've locked us out at the route level. Every override attempt is blocked. Only Altura's CEO can reopen it." The room went silent. Alan looked around at the sweating faces. "Then what do we do?" No one spoke. By 8 a.m., the board of directors convened an emergency session. The chairman slammed a hand on the table. "Alan, do you realize our stock dropped 11% overnight? The FAA has launched an investigation. Investors are demanding answers." Alan tried to steady his tone. "I'll hold a press conference in 30 minutes. I'll take full responsibility." "And Naomi Hart?" "We've reached out. No response. Maybe she wants us to suffer a little longer." The chairman stared at him coldly. "No, she wants us to learn." When Alan appeared before the cameras, his face was pale, his voice shaking slightly. "Apex Air deeply apologizes for the unfortunate incident aboard Flight 612. We are committed to a full review of our service policies to ensure every customer, regardless of race or status, is treated with equal respect." A reporter stood up. "Mr. Pierce, are you aware that the woman removed from seat 1A is the CEO of the company that manages your entire infrastructure?" Alan swallowed hard. I am aware, and we're working to resolve it." "Then tell us, how many black executives currently sit on Apex Air's leadership board?" Silence. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. No answer. That moment, captured by national television, replayed hundreds of times the following day. That evening, Naomi sat in her office at Altura. The wide glass windows reflected the city lights. On her desk, 3 monitors glowed. One showing Apex's system, still full of red error codes. One showing Twitter, where the video had reached 2.7 million views. And one displaying her inbox with multiple meeting requests from Alan Pierce. Beside her sat Olivia Park, Chief Legal Counsel, and Daniel Ruiz, CFO. "Are you going to respond?" Olivia asked quietly. Naomi didn't answer right away. She looked at her untouched cup of tea. "I don't want revenge. I want them to change. Truly change." Daniel nodded. "If they want to save the contract, they'll need to present a real reform plan. Otherwise, they'll face the consequences," Naomi finished, her tone calm, not angry. She turned toward the screen, showing Alan delivering his apology on live TV. There was no remorse in his eyes, only fear. Naomi closed hers. "They still don't understand," she said softly. "They think the problem is losing a contract. But what they've really lost is trust." The next morning, messages poured in from the FAA, the Department of Transportation, and the Pilots Association, all calling for an internal culture audit of Apex Air. By afternoon, a reporter from CNN called. "Naomi, would you like to make a statement? The entire country is watching." She smiled faintly, shaking her head. "No. I don't need to speak. They're already speaking for me." Meanwhile, in Chicago, Alan sat in the boardroom as a report was placed before him. "Naomi Hart gave us 48 hours. We have 16 left." A trembling HR director spoke up. "We've terminated Gregory Shaw and the 2 involved flight attendants. We've established a diversity reform committee, hired inclusion consultants, and launched a $2 million annual scholarship fund." Alan asked, "Is it enough?" "No. It needs Ms. Hart's approval." He lowered his head. "Send it to her, and pray." Late that night, Naomi's phone buzzed. An email from Alan. "We've submitted our reform plan. Please allow us to restore the system. I accept full personal accountability if we fail." Naomi read it, but didn't reply immediately. She looked out the window, where the city glowed beneath a silvery night sky. Beyond the glass, the world kept moving, and she knew that with a single click of send, she could either restore everything or let it all collapse. She whispered, almost to herself, "They think this is about power, but it's about character." Her finger hovered over the key. She didn't press it, not because she hesitated, but because she wanted them to feel every second of those 48 hours, to understand that respect is not a promise, but an action paid for in pain, loss, and awareness. At 47 hours, 5 minutes, and 33 seconds, Apex Air issued an internal memo. "We will either survive or disappear within 55 minutes." And Naomi Hart, the woman once asked to leave seat 1A, sat quietly, her gaze calm and steady. She didn't need to witness their collapse, because she knew true change always begins when people finally hit the ground. Hour 47. Inside Apex Air headquarters, the wall clock ticked with a dry, heavy sound. No one in the boardroom dared to speak above a whisper. The cold blue glow of the monitors reflected off pale faces, tense and sleepless. On the massive display, a line of text blinked like a sentence passed down. "Access denied. Integration locked." 1 hour left. Alan Pierce sat motionless at the head of the table. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie loosened, the 5th cup of coffee untouched and cold. He was no longer the CEO of one of America's top airlines, just a man clinging to the last shred of his dignity. "Rakesh," his voice cracked. "How long before the night flights have to be cancelled?" 40 minutes. If Naomi doesn't restore access, then we're officially paralyzed. Not just tonight, possibly for days. Alan closed his eyes. In his mind, he could still hear Naomi Hart's voice on that plane. Cold, calm, restrained. "I'm giving you 48 hours. Not a threat, a verdict." Meanwhile, on the 58th floor of Altura Systems, Naomi sat in a quiet meeting with her legal team. The room was bathed in warm light, a world apart from the chaos unraveling across the city. On the large screen, the Apex system dashboard showed every access point locked, every server still in monitoring mode. Olivia Park, her legal counsel, spoke evenly. "Apex has submitted a reform proposal. 14 measures. Termination of Gregory Shaw and the involved flight attendants. Creation of a diversity department. A $2 million annual scholarship fund. And mandatory sensitivity training for all staff." Naomi nodded. "Good. But it's still missing something." "Missing what?" asked Daniel Ruiz, the CFO. Naomi's gaze sharpened like a blade. "A personal commitment from Alan Pierce, in writing. If Apex repeats any violation within 6 months, he resigns automatically." Olivia frowned slightly. "You really want to push that far?" Naomi's voice was calm but unyielding. "I'm not pushing. I'm giving them a chance to make things right, at a cost equal to their mistake." In Chicago, Alan received the email. As he reached the final line, his hand trembled. "Resign if we violate again," he muttered. The chairman stared at him. "You have no other choice. Our stock has dropped 19% in 2 days. If you don't sign, we lose the contract entirely. If you do, we might survive." Alan exhaled, then signed. The pen touched paper like a blade to skin, each stroke carving through his pride. Hour 48. The email was sent. On Naomi's screen, a confirmation appeared. Signed, Alan Pierce, CEO, Apex Air. She stared at it for a long moment, then said quietly, "Restore the system." Daniel typed the command. The red warnings disappeared. A cascade of green lights swept across the display, like blood returning to a body that had just been revived. Apex Air was back online. The night flights were saved. At headquarters, a few exhausted cheers broke out, relief mixed with disbelief. None of them knew that it was Naomi who had allowed them to breathe again. 3 days later, Naomi received a call. "Ms. Hart." Alan's voice was hoarse. "We've begun implementing reforms. Gregory Shaw is facing legal action. The flight attendants were dismissed. The diversity division is operational. I just wanted to thank you. Believe it or not, I'm ashamed." Naomi interrupted softly, her tone sharp as frost. "I don't need your gratitude. I need you to remember this feeling. So next time someone in your system tells a woman of color to stand up for a priority passenger, they'll think twice." Silence filled the line. Then Alan said quietly, "I'll remember." A month later, Apex Air announced a full-scale reform plan. The media called it a historic turning point for American aviation. Stocks slowly recovered. And Naomi, she kept her word. She fulfilled the contract but never flew Apex again. Not out of hatred, but because she believed some bridges, once burned, should never be rebuilt, so people would always remember why they fell. 6 months later, at Altura's Grand Hall, Naomi stood at the podium, marking the completion of the final integration phase. Dozens of journalists and photographers surrounded her, cameras flashing. Behind her hung a white banner with bold black letters, "Integrity flies higher." Alan Pierce shook her hand. Under the blinding flashes, his face looked weary but respectful. Naomi remained calm. She knew the headlines would read, "Two companies reconcile." But the truth was, only one of them had truly changed. After the ceremony, Naomi stepped out onto the balcony. The Chicago sky was painted deep orange. Her phone buzzed. A message from Jaden Brooks, the young man who had filmed the video. "Ms. Hart, Altura just hired me. I'll be leading the Corporate Fairness Oversight Project. Thank you for believing in me." Naomi smiled. "It's not that I believed in you. It's that you chose the right moment to stand up." She remembered him clearly, the grey hoodie, the fearless eyes. An ordinary man who had done something extraordinary with nothing but a phone and courage. That evening, Naomi appeared on the podcast Voices That Matter. The host asked, "Many say you made a corporation kneel. Do you call that revenge?" Naomi shook her head, her voice steady. "No, I call it consequence. Revenge is making someone hurt like you did. Consequence is ensuring they never dare to cause that hurt again. Do you think you've changed the system?" "Not yet, but I've made it look in the mirror. That's where change begins." When the show ended, Naomi stood and removed her microphone. The studio lights dimmed, leaving her in gentle shadow. She remembered her father's words, "Justice isn't thunder, my daughter. It's light, quiet, but strong enough to pierce the clouds." She nodded softly. That light, tonight, she had carried it into the world. Not through rage, but through the precise calm of justice. Late at night, Naomi returned to her high-rise apartment overlooking Lake Michigan. She opened her laptop and typed the final entry in Altura's internal log. Protocol Sigma, completed. Outcome, structural reform achieved. Status, resolved. She saved the file, closed the screen, and gazed out through the glass wall. In the distance, an Apex plane crossed the night sky, its signal lights blinking like a reminder that some lessons can only be learned when you fall. Naomi smiled faintly. Not the smile of triumph, but of someone who chose the right moment to rise. She whispered, almost to herself, "They wanted me to stand up from seat 1A. They never imagined I'd make the entire system stand up, to relearn how to treat people." The sky was silent. A streak of light cut through the clouds, reflecting in her eyes. Naomi Hart, the woman once told to leave first class, had redefined what priority truly meant. Not through title, not through power, but through dignity. And the world, even if quietly, was standing up with her. People often believe that justice must arrive with verdicts, with the echo of a gavel striking, with the kind of downfall that shakes entire systems. But Naomi Hart proved the opposite. That sometimes the right silence at the right moment can make the whole world listen. She didn't scream, didn't retaliate, didn't try to make others hurt the way she did. She simply let them face the consequences of their own actions. And in that moment, those who once thought they stood above everyone else learned the most valuable lesson of all. Respect is not a privilege. It is a responsibility. They said she sought revenge, but she didn't. She restored order. The order between right and wrong, between power and dignity, between seat 1A and row 18C, where a woman once told she didn't belong made an entire corporation kneel to relearn the meaning of fairness. That day, Naomi Hart didn't just reclaim her seat. She reclaimed a voice for millions who had been dismissed, belittled, or told they weren't the right fit. She proved that sometimes you don't need power to change the world, you just need the courage to stop being silent. One tweet, one video, one decision to say, enough, and the system began to tremble. If you've ever been looked down on, judged by your skin, your voice, or your status, remember seat 1A. It's not just a seat. It's a symbol of dignity. And if one day someone tells you to stand up because someone else deserves it more, remember this. You can stand up, but not to leave. To change everything. If you believe that respect is not a privilege, it's a right, then like this video and subscribe to help spread the power of human dignity. And before you leave, write 3 words in the comments. I stand tall. Because sometimes all it takes is one person brave enough to stand tall for the whole world to stop bowing its head.